All right, guys, I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah? All right, so let's get started. Some people are on their way, but let's not wait anymore. All right, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I know it's Saturday morning. You could have been hungover. You could have been, sitting on your couch binging Netflix, but here you are. You've taken action. So thank you so much and give yourself a round of applause, please. Okay. Now, let me give you a disclaimer right at the start. This is not a sales event. We're not here to sell you anything. This is purely an educational event. So just sit back, relax, and try to absorb as much as you can. Right? Your wallets and your checkbooks are safe today. Nothing's happening to them. I promise you that. All right. Now, why we do these kind of events is because in our experience, buying your first home is obviously a very big decision involving hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's gonna impact the next few years of your financial life. I mean, it can either set you up for success or give you a lot of stress along the way. So we are here today to give you as much information as we can about the market, about what we are seeing, about what's been happening in the market for the last couple of years, what's going on right now, and how the market might take shape in the next coming weeks and months. Again, there will come a point during the presentation that we might have to speculate a little bit. I always say nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can predict the future accurately, but we will try to show you how we and about 800 of our investor clients are reading and interpreting the current data. And then we're also going to bring you some value at the end, at the middle of the presentation, at the end, where we're going to offer you something because you gave us the most important resource you have, which is your time. So we'll also try and return the favor. Now, having said that, let's get right into the meat of things. I'll give it to you, otherwise I'll drop it.
Yes.
All right. So I am Shay Sharma. I am a realtor with Royal LePage Signature. Been in the business for many, many years. Today I'm accompanied by my partner in crime, Mr. Mohit Masand. He is an experienced mortgage advisor. Mohit, would you like to say hi and give a short introduction?
Great to see you all. And I'd be speaking in the second part of the presentation, talk about mortgage, the process of getting a mortgage. So we'll do that. So stay tuned. We have some very interesting stuff. And once that's done, I'll jump in.
Thank you, Mohit. All right. Very, very quickly, I've already spoken about the agenda, at least 50% of it. We're going to cover the market, last 2 years, now, and what might, again, happen in the next coming weeks and months. And then Mohit is going to cover his mortgage piece. So, state of the market. We have a large database of first-time buyers, investors, and all sorts of clients, and we get many calls every day, every week. And if you associate with any of the words that you see on the screen here, trust me, you're not the only one. We deal with calls every day where the sentiment is same or similar to something on the screen here. Now, it's going to get real hard real quick. Be with me. Any time you want me to stop. The good thing today is we have fewer people, so we can actually talk one-on-one. If you have any questions, you want me to stop along the way, feel free to do that. Now, this is the real estate prices in the GTA for the last 40 plus years, 1980 to 2023. Mind you, it's not the absolute number when it comes to prices, it's the percentage change in prices year on year. And this graph essentially tells me a couple things here. The very first thing is the line that you see going across the graph here, which is 6.73%, which says that compounded year on year appreciation in GTA for the last 40 years has been about 6.73%. For the sake of this conversation, I'll call it 7%. So that's the first message. If you buy a property in GTA, compounded year over year, it'll grow by 7%. I'm not saying every year it's going to grow by 7%. One year it could be 2, the other year it could be 13. On average, 7%. The second thing that the 7% appreciation tells me is that if we hold on to our units, properties, investments, anywhere between 7 to 10 years, the property prices in GTA double. Again, roughly that timeline, 7 to 10 years. And the third thing, which is perhaps the easiest to make out right now, is that no matter where we are on this graph, above the line or below, we're always going to gravitate towards the line. So, knowing this fact, let me ask you a question here. This was February 2022, the peak of the market. Was that a good time to enter the market? Because we know wherever we're at, up or down, we'll always go back closer to this line. So people made decisions at the peak of the market, buying investments. They were obviously not looking at this data because it was pretty evident to us that if we enter at this point, we're going to come here eventually at some point. But the interesting fact to note here is that we're here right now in 2023. At the end of 2023, right now, mid-2024, we're actually further down. So perhaps this might be a good time to enter the market because we know we're going to gravitate towards this line again and we're going to go here. We just don't know when that's going to happen. But it's not a question of whether, but only when. Moving on. In red, you see the real estate prices for the last couple of years within the GTA, and the blue dots tell you how the interest rates have behaved. Now, let's start from May 2020. We all know March 2020 was when COVID hit. There was a lot of uncertainty in the market. People didn't know what to do. For a couple of months, we were all in a major lockdown. There was no real estate activity going on. Hence, the prices plummeted a little bit. But when people figured shit out, then we had a lot of liquidity come into the market. There was a lot of money flowing around. A big part of that liquid money made its way to the real estate market. Hence, the property prices started to go up, and they went all the way up for the next couple of years by the time we reached here, which was again February of 2022, when the Bank of Canada said, enough's enough, the inflation is totally out of control, let's press the brakes here. How did they do that? By increasing the interest rates. Now you see an obvious correlation here. As the interest rates started to go up, the real estate prices started to come down. That correlation, mind you, is true, but it's true for most part, not 100% of times. This we keep in mind and we'll discuss a little bit later. Now, COVID starts, we get to the peak of the market. The interest rates start to go up, and the property prices come down all the way up to December of 2022. But then something interesting happens here. What happens here is that on January 25th, 2023, Bank of Canada had a meeting. Our friend Tim said that we're going to pause the interest rates and see what happens. He didn't say, mind you, that the interest rate hikes are behind us or we're going to start cutting the rates now. He just said we'll pause and see what happens. At that point, miraculously, somehow, it gave buyers and consumers a lot of confidence, fake confidence. The sentiment changed. We saw a 17% increase in sales. We saw a 59% increase in first-time home buyer activity. And the prices went up by more than 150K in just 4 months. That's what sentiment can do. So right here, we were roughly at about 1,005,000. And then in 4 months, we were here at about a 1.2 million mark. Now, the Bank of Canada had to step in again because this is not what they intended to do by raising the interest rates. So here, they stepped in and increased interest rates 2 further times, again, pushing the market down. But then again, something similar happened this year, which was a result of something that we call seasonality of real estate. Again, something that we are going to talk about a little bit later, but just keep the word in mind, seasonality of real estate. Right now, what you're seeing is that the interest rates are coming down, however, the prices are coming down with it. So that correlation that we always believe in, that when the rates come down, the prices go up, true for most part, yes, not 100% true. We'll talk more about that. Now that we know what's been happening for the last couple of years, let's focus on what's happening right now, last couple of months, let's say. Now, the graph on the left shows you stats for May 2024, May 2023, May 2022, so on and so forth. So the month of May for the last 10 years. On average, in the month of May, the number of transactions happening in the GTA have been around 9,000. However, this May, we had only 7,000 transactions, so we can safely say that the demand is below the average line. Go to the month of June, same thing. We are way below the average mark. Let's go to the month of July, same thing. The 10-year average is roughly 7,600, but we're sitting at about 5,300, way below average. So the point that I want to drive home right now is that the demand, the number of transactions right now in the market is way below average. Let's look at the other side of the coin now, the supply. Here we are seeing how many homes are actively in the market or active in the market ready to be sold. They're listed right now. Same concept. Yes, sir.
You're all
All house types. Yes, yes. We can go into the details of, let's say, a condo versus a townhouse versus a detached. However, right now we're just trying to understand at let's say, at 10,000 feet, where's the market at? And then we can dig deeper if you need. Now we're looking at the supply side of things. So on average, in the month of May, the average number of homes up in the market actively for sale is about 16,000. However, in this May, we had 21,700 homes. We go to June, same story, 17,000, 23,000. We go to July, same story. The active number of homes in the market is way, way above average. We haven't had the chance to arrange or just put this data together for the month of August, but I can tell you honestly, the situation is even worse. The gap between the average and the actual supply is larger right now. So let's combine the last two messages here. We're talking about the demand and we're talking about the supply. Economics 101. What do you think happens when for any product, forget real estate, but for any product, the supply is too high and the demand is too low?
Really?
The prices should go down, which is exactly what we're seeing happening here. So this drop in prices, even though the interest rates are dropping as well, the drop in prices are a result of two things. A, the supply and demand, and B, the seasonality, which we're going to talk about. Now, one disclaimer again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm not trying to play Nostradamus today. I left my crystal ball at home. This is just the way we are interpreting the data. You can interpret it the way you like. We'll just give you what we think from our experience and from a number of years combined, roughly 20 years of real estate experience. And this is how, as I said, many of our investors are also interpreting the data. Let's go into it. Now let's go very broad at this point. Now in this slide, we're going to see how the real estate market, specifically in the GTA, has behaved over the last couple recessions. So on the left, the circle that you see, this is the 2008-2009 financial crisis. The green bars that you see here is the real estate prices, and the black line that you see here is the interest rates. Now, from the top of the cycle in 2008-2009 to the bottom of the cycle, we took about 15 months to go from the highest level of interest rates to the lowest levels. Now, while the interest rates were coming down, look at what happens to the property prices. The property prices plummet as well. Right? So interest rates coming down, the property prices come down as well. However, the more important point to note here is that as soon as we reach the bottom of the cycle, the property prices go up significantly. Same thing happens in 2014, 2015 as well. While the interest rates were coming down, the property prices were pretty much stagnant. Minor ups and downs, but pretty much stagnant. But as soon as we hit the bottom of the cycle, the prices increased significantly. Now, COVID was obviously not a normal market cycle, but in a way, the pattern still exists. Interest rates get dropped, no to zero activity, and then the prices shoot up. Now that we understand that, let's see what all the major banks, not are saying, but were saying about 6 months ago. And we're taking data from 6 months ago just to put into perspective that we can perhaps forecast and predict a few things based on past experiences and the current market trends. So at the bottom, you see it's the forecast combined from all the major banks, Bank of Canada, RBC, CIBC, so on and so forth. All the banks in January 2024 said that come May, June this year, we will have the first interest rate cut, which was very accurate. In June, we had a 25 basis point cut. Another one came in July, another one came in this very month. So we've already had 3 interest rate cuts in 2024 so far. What the banks predict is that by the end of 2025, the interest rates would be somewhere between 2.25 and 3.25%, which is roughly 50% of where we're at or where we were at the peak of the cycle. I honestly disagree with this forecast now. And it's not just me, it's all the banks as well. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, that graph was from January 2024. What's happening right now is this. The interest rates have been too high for too long, and the Bank of Canada has successfully been able to break the back of our economy. Now, it's similar to the story where the interest rates were too low for too long during COVID, which increased the inflation in the market, the liquidity. Now, to fix that problem, we had to apply some brakes, and then now the interest rates have been too high for too long. September 10th, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, Macklem says deeper cuts might be warranted if economy disappoints, and economy is disappointing right now. We pretty much have a flatline GDP at this point. Bank of Canada to start jumbo rate cuts by December, says CIBC, September 12th, 2 days ago. BMOI's faster Bank of Canada rate cuts, September 13th. What we think now, based on all the numbers that we're seeing, is that the interest rate cuts are going to be deeper and sooner than what the banks originally predicted. The banks in January said they will hit bottom, or the interest rates will hit bottom by the end of 2025. I personally think, and we as an organization think, it could be much sooner. Why? This is why. The unemployment rate is at 6.6% right now. What we think is that we're going to have 2 more interest rate cuts on October 23rd and December 11th. 25 bips at least, could be 50 basis points as well. So 2 more rate cuts coming this year itself. Now, let me combine this with a word that I've already used a couple times here, seasonality of real estate. Now, we know the interest rates are going down and they will continue to go down. How the seasonality in real estate works is this. In festive season, in December and January, we usually see very low activity. There are not a lot of sales happening, but end of January, starting February, everybody is back in the market. They want to start looking at houses so they can start putting in offers, have an accepted offer by early spring, and then close 60 to 90 days hence at the onset of summer. So the peak of the activity that we see in the market every year is from February all the way until June. July, August is summer break. So kids are home, people are out vacationing, enjoying their best time of their life in summers. The activity drops, but it doesn't drop significantly, but it still drops. And it flatlines and remains stagnant all the way up till November, and then we're back into festive season. So every year, this doesn't change. This hasn't changed for the last 40, 50, 60 years. February to June is when we have most number of real estate transactions, period. Combining interest rate cuts with the seasonality, in my humble opinion, I think the next couple of months, we're going to see stagnant activity. The demand and supply gap that we're experiencing right now will remain. The prices will remain significantly, or rather, pretty much close to where they are, or they could even drop by a slight 1 to 2%. I wouldn't be surprised. So the message is, for the next couple of months, the prices may remain stagnant, or they might go down, but come spring, it would be a different market. And all the craziness that we've seen at the peak of the market, the multiple offers, bidding wars, houses selling 100, 200, 300K, over asking, it will come back. We just don't know when. I'm not saying it'll come back in February, and I'm not saying it won't. It will come back at some point, we just don't know when. It could be summer next year, it could be end of next year, I have no idea. But February, for sure, the activity is going to pick up. Was there a question? No? All right. So this is where we stop talking about the market, and I'd like to mention something here. I said at the start, you've given us the most important resource that you could. Now it's our turn to return the favor. What we do with most of our clients and why we started doing it in the first place is a lot of clients have been calling us for the last, let's say, from when the uncertainty, hit the market after it was at its peak, saying what's happening with the market, what's happening with the interest rates, they're going up, down, and sideways, we don't know what's going on. So what we started doing is what we call, it's just a sexy word, we call it a real estate action plan, but essentially what it is a financial checkup from the neck up. We sit with you for about 20 to 30 minutes, free consultation. We try and understand where you are in terms of your real estate journey, what your short-term and long-term goals are, and how we might be able to help you. I use the word might and emphasize on it because the fact is we can't help everyone, but if we can, if we are fit, we move on to the next step. And the next step just could be creating a plan for you which is quantifiable, which is actionable, that you can stick to irrespective of what your timelines are. It could be 6 months or 3 years. Irrespective, we just give you a plan, and then we have regular accountability calls with you every 3 to 6 months, making sure that you're able to stick to the plan. Is there any assistance and help we can provide along the way?
Man.
Now understanding what a real estate action plan is, my friend Mohit is going to talk about something.
Absolutely. So what I really wanted to say is, this information is fantastic. But like you asked, does this apply to every property type? This is a generic number. We have to make something that's applicable to everybody. But if you wanted to book a real estate action plan with us, we could do something customized to your needs. On top of that, we can both be there if you want us to, and we can run a mortgage eligibility check for you as well. So a combination of a real estate action plan with a mortgage checkup. And if you book today, we can put you in a draw, and we can have a prize at the end of the webinar. But that's about it. So we're going to take a break, I guess, now.
Yes, and if you want the form, just
Correct.
raise your hand and one of these
Correct.
beautiful ladies can hand you the
So
form.
take a break, have some water, and if you want the form, just let us know. We'll have them over. You can fill it up. We'll book an appointment, and in 5 minutes, we'll start with the mortgage part of the presentation. Awesome. See you.
Hi, man.
Guys, in the meantime, I'd just like to say one thing. I hope I don't need the mic for this. So this is a report that we generate on a monthly basis. Like, we are both MBAs, we can read a graph or two, I guess. So what we do is spend a lot of time every month just dissecting the real estate data. So this is something that we generate every month. Again, I know the graphs and everything else just looks daunting, but we do have detailed notes in here in simple language so that you can really understand what's going on in the market. Just make sure that the emails that you provide us are accurate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you this report once a month and then another email with all the real-time stats from the market.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we can get started with the mortgage side of things now. So we spoke about real estate, we spoke about the potential direction of where the market is going. But if you think you are ready to think about buying a property, maybe now, maybe a year later, I guess the first thing that you need to do is find out how much of a mortgage can you qualify for, right? So when you start thinking of buying a property, I guess what happens is you'd reach out to Share as an example, and he'd say, I'm ready, I want to buy a property. What next? And what he'd ideally tell you is, what's your budget? And that's what we can help you with. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk to you about as to what do we look at when we are running your mortgage eligibility, and what are those things that can help you enhance your profile when it comes to how the lenders look at your credit, your income, etc. So those are things we'll talk about. I'll do a quick introduction before we go on to that. So I guess all of you know my name is Mohit. I work with DLC Affinity Mortgage Solutions. I've been doing this for close to a decade now, and have consulted about 939 clients. I lose count, so I have to look. A couple of things that I take pride in is the fact that clients always come first. Don't say that to my banks because I'm supposed to tell them you're both equally important to me. But yeah, my clients are the most important, or at least a little more important than the banks. So client first approach is important. Product knowledge is something that I can bring to the table as well, because as a mortgage agent, I have access to close to about 100 lenders. So it's not like walking into a bank and saying, hey, XYZ, I've been banking with you for 5 years. I want to get a mortgage. Sorry, we can't help you. Your profile doesn't work with us. That's not how it works with mortgage agents. We have 3 top banks with us, plus almost over 100 other lenders that we can work with. Those and access to multiple lenders, like I just mentioned. So diving right in, let's first talk about who a first-time home buyer is, right? Because this is the first-time home buyer seminar. We really want to know who a first-time home buyer is. Now, obviously, if you're buying your property for the first time, you are a first-time home buyer. But what I meant to say is that it's not restricted to that. You may have owned a property before and you could still be considered a first-time home buyer. So when it comes to mortgages, and for you to be able to take advantage of the first-time home buyer benefits, including the home buyer's plan, like withdrawing money from your RRSP or setting up a first-time home buyer savings account, for you to be eligible for all of that, you have either not owned a property before, pretty straightforward, but if you have and you haven't owned a property this calendar year and the preceding 4 calendar years, you'd still be considered a first-time home buyer. So to give you an example, we are in September 2024. Let's say you want to buy a property now, and the last property that you owned, you sold in October of 2019. So this calendar year, you haven't owned the property. The last 4 calendar years, you haven't owned a property either. You are a first-time home buyer. But what you also need to keep in mind is, let's say you sold your last property in 2019, then you got married and moved in with your spouse in 2021. Although you were not on title of the property, you'd still not be considered a first-time home buyer, because you were living in the property that was owned by your spouse and you lived in it as a primary residence. So a couple of things: first-time home buyers, buying your first home, newcomers to Canada, recently divorced, apply, is eligible for first-time home buyers as well instantly. So there's no waiting period there. And people re-entering the market, like I just said. So here's a quick snapshot of the process of arranging a mortgage. Like I think both of us have mentioned a couple of times, every profile is unique, every client is unique, but this provides a good idea to you of what to expect when we start discussing your mortgage. So like I said, the first step is to run your mortgage eligibility. So going back to that previous example of mine, you reached out to Share and Share said, I want to know how much of a mortgage would you qualify for? And you're like, sure, do you know anybody? He gives you my number, hopefully. And we do a first call. So when we do that, I speak with you over the phone, I run your numbers, or we get on a Google call. We're not looking at documents right now. We're not pulling your credit right now. Why aren't we? Because I want to keep it straight, simple for you. This is just the first call. I ask you a few questions about your income, your credit, how much down payment do you have, previous employment, etc. Based on that, we arrive at a mortgage eligibility. You like that? You're like, this works for me. We move on to the next step, where I send you a mortgage qualification email and I send you a list of documents that I need you to start gathering for me. I also tell you of the assumptions I've used, say approximate property tax, or if there's any maintenance fee on the property, not and stuff like that. We make those assumptions and that will be in the email that you receive. So this process generally, just to give you an idea of the timeline here, from the first call until document gathering takes about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how proactive the client is. You want to do it sooner, you can, but generally we've seen that once the call has been done, they receive an email, they'll discuss it with Share, and they'd be like, sure, this works for us, let us send Mohit the documents. Once that's done, we move on to the next step of getting a pre-approval done. We've got you the documents. This is when you start looking at properties. We apply for the pre-approval and you search for properties, make offers, see what you like, etc. This is generally a couple of months. So I guess from month 2 to 4 is when you're looking for properties. You have the pre-approval. A pre-approval generally takes about a week's time to come. And then you can use that to put offers on properties as well. So you eventually find a property. What next? You have a pre-approval. Let's say we've done pre-approval with bank 1. You found a property. You come back to me. What next? that's when we go for the firm approval. So a couple of clarifications here. So let's say we did a pre-approval with bank 1 and you're like, Mohit, is there any other bank offering a better solution right now? Because we did a pre-approval 2 months back. Absolutely. So you did a pre-approval with bank 1, we could maybe do a firm approval with bank 2 or bank 3, it doesn't matter. However, if you wanted to go back to the same bank, we could as well. So that's when we start applying for a firm approval. We have the property, we get you a firm approval. If the bank needs any more documents, we fulfill that. And that's when the deal gets instructed to your solicitor, who eventually closes the deal, which is another, say, 2 to 3 months. That's the closing period from buying the property to getting the keys of the property. So in all, this could range from anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And what I want to emphasize on is when we do these seminars and when we say, it's a good time to start your process, is because it could take longer. We've had clients that we've been working with for a year sometimes, where they just came in, they ran their eligibility, and then they're going back and forth saying, okay, you know what, I'm maybe looking for a new job, or there's a potential of a hike in salary, and that's where we wait and we guide you accordingly. So the sooner we start, the better it is. But this is what the process looks like. Now, once we've clarified on the process, what are we looking at when it comes to your eligibility? How do we qualify you? There are 5 C's to mortgage underwriting, as we call it. See that these are the 5 pillars of mortgage eligibility. The first one is the character of the client. And what we really mean by that, it's a summary of your profile. It is my opportunity to present your profile in as many words with regards to, what's the strength? If there are any weaknesses in the profile, how do I address that? It is the subjective part of my application where I tell the bank why this person is the right fit for you, right? This is really how it works, because every single bank has their unique products. Yes, there will be clients that would fit with almost all the banks because their profile is very straightforward. And yes, there will also be clients which would only fit with a certain product with a certain bank, right? And that's where we have to understand that and present it. That's character, basically. That's the first C. The next is capacity, your income. A lot of people would tell you that is the most important part of your profile. I'd say it's pretty important for sure. So how much income do you make? The bank really needs to know that to run their ratios. Capital is your down payment and your other assets like your net worth, etc. The collateral, which is your subject property. So like you asked, are you getting a townhouse? Is it a condominium? Where is it located? And things like those. That's a section for me to highlight the property. And it's been recently upgraded, the basement's finished, etc. So that's your collateral, and then finally your credit. What we talk about in detail today is just 3 sections here. We'll talk about income, your capital, we'll talk about down payment, and we'll talk about credit. Because character, like I said, is just a summary, and when it comes to property, we haven't shortlisted one yet. But like I said, it's more about me telling them what property it is and why it's a good collateral for the bank to have. Because ultimately that's the collateral they have. So talking about capacity, income. Now, when it comes to income, what I really want to tell you about, and this is more to prepare you for you to start your mortgage process, is, what is the bank looking at? How are they using your income? There are sometimes they can use all of your income. There are times where I can use more than your base income. I'll get to that. And there are times where they can only maybe use a part of your income. So let me explain that. The first thing they look at is whether you're salaried, you're hourly, or are you self-employed. Why does that matter? Because let's say you say I'm salaried, and just as an example, I make $100,000 a year. That's very straightforward. I can present the bank saying this person makes $100,000 a year. I look at the average of the last 2 years. If it's higher, I can use that. But assuming it's not, the salary is $100,000. That's what the bank used to qualify your mortgage. If you're hourly though, there's one more factor that I need to look at, is how many hours are you guaranteed every week, right? So the reason why I highlight this is, let's say you're looking for a new job and your employer says, fantastic, you have a job offer here, we'll give you $50 an hour. Fantastic. And on an average, you'd work about 40 hours every week. What does that mean? What does an average 40 hour mean? It could be 0, it could be 80. And when I present that to the bank, what they want to see is what is the minimum number of guaranteed hours every week. So if you are talking to a new employer, it's important that you keep that in mind. What are the minimum guaranteed hours that you have? If you're self-employed, it's a little more intricate, so we can do it more on case by case offline, but just to give you a summary, we generally need a 2-year average for self-employed clients. Unless they have a past history in the same industry, and then we can try and work that around. There's special products, I've done quite a few of those. Let me give you an example. So I have somebody who is in IT and one position. So they're working as an IT specialist at a company for the last 3 years. They left that and now they started independent contracting over the last 6 months. And they've only filed one return for the company where they're taking their money and they paid themselves a small salary. I'm still able to use their income from the last 2 years because it's in the same industry and it's very easy for me to explain the potential of their income. So that is a possibility. The next thing to learn is full-time versus part-time. Go ahead. With a bank, yeah. With an A-lender, yeah. You're welcome. So full-time versus part-time. Are you full-time or is your job part-time? If you're doing a full-time job plus a part-time job, the banks may be a little hesitant to use your part-time income unless you have some history, say 6 months to a year at least. Not because they're concerned about your income, they're concerned about whether you can maintain 2 jobs in a single day. Right? Are you able to work 12 hours plus the commute? But if you've been doing that for 6 months to 12 months, we can present your case. Are you permanent? Are you on a contract? Or are you an independent contractor? Another important information to have. Right? So if you're permanent, fantastic. If you're on contract, I want to see previous history so that I can present that to the bank, right? Probationary period, is there any probation period? A lot of people think I can't qualify for a mortgage if I'm on probation. That's not the case. You can qualify for a mortgage even while on probation if we have enough history. So a summary of what I'm trying to present here is, and previous employment history of course, is that there's a lot of subjectivity. So there are answers to most questions. All that it needs you to do is ask the question. Right? A lot of people make assumptions. I'm on probation, just started contracting, and I may not qualify. We've done everything, right? There are answers to every question. So that was income. Let's now talk about down payment. We can run through this. Basically, people ask me, what is the minimum down payment? Some people assume it's 20%, some people assume it's 5%. Here's a breakdown of how it works. If the property that you're buying is under $1 million, so a maximum property value of $999,999, $1 less than $1 million. In that case, the minimum down payment is 5% for the first $500,000 of property value, 10% for any additional amount. So if we take an example, let's say you purchase a property for $800,000. It's 5% for the first 500, which is $25,000. It's 10% for the remaining 300 from 500 to 800. That's $30,000. So the minimum down payment is $55,000. On top of that, you need to also set aside some money for closing cost, which in my opinion could be between 1.5 and 2% of the property value, right? But minimum down payment 5% for the first $500,000, 10% for any additional amount until $999,999. Once you hit $1 million mark on the property value, the minimum down payment is 20% flat. So let's say you bought a property for $999,999. The minimum down payment is $75,000. If you bought a property for $1 million, $1 more than that, your minimum down payment is $200,000. This is how it works, right? So that's your minimum down payment. Is there a zero down payment product in Canada? There used to be one a few years ago, but is there one now? Any thoughts on that? Anyone, any guesses? Zero down payment product? What do you think?
I don't think you would have been me.
What's that?
I don't think you put it up there and say, oh,
Yeah.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah, smart. So there isn't an official zero down payment product, but there is a borrowed down payment product available. And how that works, it's an official product that the banks and the insurers offer where you can borrow a part or all of your down payment as long as it works in your income ratios. And I wouldn't really confuse you by talking about income ratios and GDS, TDS. This is not the platform for that. But the point that I want to drive home is if you're short of down payment, when we speak, if and when we speak, feel free to ask me the question, can I borrow my down payment? Is there any way I can borrow? And the answer actually is yes, as long as it works in your ratios. And I've had people who borrowed all of their down payment. All they had was the closing cost, 1.5% to 2% of the property value. And everything else was borrowed.
I think was ownership. Are you think with a co-ownership?
No, this is not co-ownership. This is officially, you have a line of credit available of $30,000. That's all your down payment is. As an example, you borrow it from them. No co-ownership. There is co-ownership, but that's a separate program altogether. It's very, very different. It's meant for people who do not qualify with the bank. But in here, this is standard borrowed down payment. You borrow from your unsecured sources. Right? So that is certainly available. What are the other sources of down payment that you can have access to as a first-time home buyer? Obviously, your savings account, your checking account is standard. You can withdraw from your TFSA account as well. Gifted down payment. You can have funds gifted to you by your immediate family. So your parents, your siblings, grandparents, children, etc. Borrowed down payment, which we just talked about. So you can borrow your down payment. Money from overseas. So if you have funds, either your relatives are overseas, so they're transferring the money here, or you have funds overseas, you are able to transfer the money here. The only condition is it has to be wire transferred, and I need to see the bank statements from the country that the money is coming from. And the third condition is the money has to be here 30 days before closing. Any overseas funds need to be here 30 days prior to closing and need an explanation. The banks are getting very, very strict with anti-money laundering. They're coming up with new rules in October. So overseas funds are allowed, but tell me in advance so that we can prepare a plan for it. Equity wouldn't apply to first-time home buyers, but if you already own the property, you sell that and pull out equity, you're able to use that. Or even if you don't sell it, you can refinance it, take mortgage, and use that as down payment. Then we talk about the home buyer's plan, RRSP. I guess you would have followed the budget recently where they increased the limit of what you can withdraw. But let me, reinforce that. As a first-time home buyer, you're able to withdraw $60,000 per person from your RRSP tax-free. So let me take a step back. If you have an RRSP, I already own a home, I have money in RRSP. If I was to withdraw the money, it'll be taxed at my current tax slab, personal tax slab. However, if you are a first-time home buyer, you can withdraw up to $60,000 per person. So if you're a couple, up to $120,000 in total. From your RRSP tax-free, the conditions are the money has to be returned to your RRSP within 15 years and the repayment can start 5 years later. So you're off the hook for the first 4 or 5 years, the repayment starts 5 years later, and then the money has to be in there within 15 years. So that's how the RRSP withdrawal works. And then the new first-time home buyer savings account. I'd say take advantage of that. If you are planning to buy your first property in the near future, start putting money towards your first-time home buyer savings account. How it works is any eligible first-time home buyer is able to deposit and withdraw up to $40,000 from a first-time home buyer savings account. So every time you deposit the money, it becomes tax-free from your income. So it's tax deductible, but you can only put $8,000 every year. So even if you wanted to buy next year, it's a good idea to do $8,000 this tax year and $8,000 next tax year. So at least you took advantage of it. Right? So that's the first-time home buyer's saving account. Quick summary on the credit requirement. Obviously, the banks want you to have some sort of an established credit history here in Canada. But let's say if you're new to the country and the credit's not established, there are alternative sources available for that as well. So any foreign Equifax or TransUnion is acceptable, or there are alternative sources like your utility bills, credit card bills, etc. That, however, is only applicable to newcomers to Canada, which means you've been in the country for less than 5 years. And that's when alternative sources of credit are available. They want your score to be strong, of course. If there are any past delinquencies, you missed a payment in the past, a couple of credit card payments, phone bill payments, and if there's an explanation, that's no problem. we can work with that. If there's been a collection on your account and there's an explanation, even that's okay. The only time you have to wait is if there's been a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy. But anything less than that, even a collection for that matter, and there's an explanation, it's been paid off, we are able to explain that to the bank. And so that's with your credit. And things to keep in mind is payment history, first of all. I see that with a lot of first-time home buyers. I did that when I was new to the country, say 11 years ago. I got one credit card, balance of limit of $2,000, always overused it. Because I didn't want the hassle of having multiple cards. But that kills your credit score. You want to make sure that your credit utilization is less than 50% of your available limit. So if your available limit on the card is $2,000, keep it under the $1,000, your utilization. And if the utilization goes up, get another card. But make sure you're not using any card more than 50 or 60% because that hits your score. Your amounts owed on the card, the length of credit, and the credit mix. It's good to have, let's say, a credit card and a line of credit and a couple of different things on your credit to make it stronger. And I guess that's all I have got on my side here, unless you have any questions.
Well, the other question that
Yes.
So another thing that can happen even for a joint property. Like, so for example, if I'm buying a property about my wife, I can use my RRS street fund that.
Correct. If you are a first-time home buyer, you are able to withdraw 60,000 yourself. And if your wife is first-time home buyer too, she can withdraw 60,000 from her account.
Whatever I'm drawing, I can be using for the joint property.
Correct, yeah. That's fine. Yeah, that's no problem. Right. Any question? Yes, sir.
So, case of contracting or like I have a, like some level is behind a job for past years and then there's two to work contracting. Then you said 6 to 1 year, 6 months to 1 year is possible, then some approvals from. So, hey, that's it. Does the question require the first hole on with this account?
Is it advisable? So you buy it under your holding company? Is that what you're trying to say?
Don't show salary, show business income, and then buy the first hole with something it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's possible if that's what your question is. Exactly like you said, if you've recently started contracting, the banks majorly only look at your personal income. But you have 2 years of history doing your IT job. And if you paid yourself any salary at all from the corporation, we can club that all and try to use an average.
No salary, we just on the business.
So you're not paying yourself anything?
Buying up the business name, the buying the corporation name.
So there are two separate questions. I can handle that offline. I'd not recommend that. That's a short answer for 2 reasons, but I can handle that offline for you. It's a little detailed answer for that. Anything else?
And push to the negotiating the mortgage rates with the banks. So what you be able to help us, getting a better rates and things like that as part of, because what happens, since we already have a bank card, your bank is reaching out to us that say, what to buy mortgages, etc. So is it something, you can
Yeah.
based on experience?
Exactly. So we have access to 3 banks on our side. We have TD, BMO and Scotiabank. So we generally get whatever rates that their branches are offering. So it's not that big a difference. Okay. So if the answer is yes, we can negotiate rates based on whatever is available in the market, probably even better that because of our volumes with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
At the same time, internet say things like, this is the better market now, people are, outdated the way. So it's actually more expensive, body, power. Yeah. Anyways, the thing, get all that.
You want to answer that?
Sure. So, let me start off by saying, is renting bad? Not at all. If that floats your boat, if that's what you want to do, you don't want the hassle of home ownership, you don't want to pay property taxes, you don't want to, change appliances every 15 years, there's nothing wrong with that. But when there are positives, there are also things to consider. Now, whatever you're putting in rent, $2,500, $3,000 every month. Now, where we're at right now, a 1-bedroom in this building costs about $2,500 to $2,600. A 2-bedroom, upwards of $3,000. Is that the best use of your money? If you think the answer is yes, so be it. We're not here to convince you otherwise, not at all. However, for somebody like me, who is a strong believer in investing in real estate, I think people make money in all sorts of ways. There's NFTs, there's stocks, there's crypto. Do whatever floats your boat. But being a real estate investor, in fact, starting first as a real estate investor and then becoming a realtor along the way, I'm a strong believer of real estate as an asset that you cannot ignore when you're trying to build long-term wealth. So, the answer to your question then, I know it's a long answer, but the 7% appreciation graph that I showed, now that data has been true for the last 40, 50, 70 years. For as far back as we have any recorded data to show in the GTA market, that data has been true. What's true is that every 7 to 10 years, if you hold on to your investments, your property prices go up, probably double every 7 to 10 years. If you think you can get better returns and more safer returns elsewhere, and you want to continue to rent, by all means, do it. But if you believe rather in the GTA real estate market, and if you feel that, yes, it's a safe investment for me, that I invest my money today, yes, there might be certain additional costs with it. But if I hold on to that unit for 7 to 10 years and double my money, and that's the route you want to take, or at least one of the investment decisions you want to take apart from stocks or crypto or whatever else, then that's, something that you can definitely look into. Did I answer your question though? Yeah? Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hey.
So, jumping directly to private property.
No, to me you are. So,
So, actually, our finance fund in Saga and newspaper, Scott and I'm telling them they what with the truth.
yeah.
And the other option we have is corporate development. Didn't sell their property down to 18 years, which were not the better returns. And that goes all the way.
Right. Right. Okay. So, can I?
Returns.
Sure. Things which is subjective, which is different from one person or one party to another. And then the second thing is we need to churn some numbers, right? Now, when it comes to churning some numbers, we'll have to look at, let's say, Durham region, for example. Now, Durham region could be Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, Pickering, or whatever. And then we need to see which neighborhoods are you interested in? What's the kind of average appreciation we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years in those neighborhoods? And that's kind of your return on investment, right? And then on the other side, we can look at certain condos. Let's say City Center, Mississauga. Let's say Lakeshore, Mimico, where we're at right now. And then see on paper, which side gives you a better return on investment. So that's the more objective side of things. Then comes the personal side of things. Where do you work? How does your commute look like when you live in Mississauga versus Durham? Because now we're talking about two different, very different, or in fact opposite corners of the GTA. So by having that discussion, which again ties back to the real estate action plan, because that's exactly what we do. We try to understand your personal and financial situation, right? And again, I'm not saying we'll have all the answers in 20 minutes, 30 minutes of consultation, but we'll know at least what the next steps are. So, two sides of things, the personal side and then the number crunching side, and a combination of the two.
Just selling both the properties in next couple of years. Our end goal is different.
Yeah.
Find it just because we need.
Yeah.
Considering that 2 years pattern, which is the best option?
I think she's asking whether it over that. Still have was done.
Okay.
Right over done.
Sure.
I based on.
So, a simple answer to that, again, without any number crunching that has been done, freehold has seen better appreciation than condos. Is it like a huge difference? Not at all.
It's a condo.
Oh, it's a condo townhouse. Then I think, because again, I also want to keep all your options open as an investor. If you want to sell it tomorrow, sell it. If, let's say, your situation changes and you can actually not sell it and yet carry on with the other plans that you have, that's the best case scenario. Because again, I strongly believe, I honestly get paid to sell houses, but I advise my clients to not sell unless they really, really have to. Like, selling should be a last resort because, again, the basics are the same. Hold on to that investment for 7 to 10 years, you'll double your money. So why sell if you're not required to sell, right? So now that I want you guys to keep your options open and you should be able to either sell it or not, I'd probably go for a condo because, again, if you decide to still continue with your plans and rent the place out, it gives you a very high chance that you'll find good quality, white collar, people with good credits. And then the vacancy is going to be low, the rentability is going to be high. So in that sense, maybe, again, I don't know anything at this point when it comes to your information, but if I have to give you an answer, then perhaps a condo would make more sense in a great location like downtown here, city center, Mississauga, versus a 40-year-old condo townhouse, which comes with a lot of maintenance and upkeep cost as well. Make sense? Any other questions?
On the supply side,
Yeah.
question on the supply side, you mentioned that the supply is still high, right? I think that's the reason the price were coming down.
Yeah.
And new things that's coming up, I know I've been seeing the news that the federal government or the provincial government, they are promoting new communities and new homes building up selling.
Is it?
What's your what's up the on the market? Are we seeing a lot of new homes coming like all the governments has done?
Absolutely not. So what we really need to look at right now is the housing shortage. In fact, shortage is also a very mild term if you really ask me. It's honestly a crisis, a chronic one at that. Now, just to strike equilibrium, with the growing population, we need about 5 million homes in the next 10 years, roughly, which means about 250,000 homes every year. In the last 40 years, we haven't even hit 50% of that mark ever. Are we going to now miraculously get 500,000, 250,000 homes every year? Definitely not. On the other hand, the pre-construction side of things look way worse than they used to. In the last 18 months for the pre-construction side of things have been the worst time for this industry in the last 25 years. Where on average we see 20 to 22,000 new condo units hit the market every year. Starting 2027, 2028, in fact, we are projecting to see only between 1,000 and 3,000, and this is amidst the crisis that we already have. In our humble opinion, I have all the data right here. I'm not sure how much time everybody has right now to, spend time on that. I'm more than happy to go over this right now. But this problem, in our opinion, is only going to get worse. The home ownership dream is only going to get worse going on, especially towards the end of this decade, especially when it comes to condos, because the supply will pretty much be dead. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I think so. So we're essentially saying is whatever the supply was seeing is all the more people reselling their homes and not new units are not coming.
Yeah. So the trend is true. The trend will persist for the next couple of months as well, but it's short-lived. It's short-lived. The supply is going to go down. The demand is going to go up. As I said previously, it's just a question of whether, not when. No, sorry. Opposite. When, not whether. My apologies.
Yeah, the question there.
Lawrence?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I will do that.
Great, great. Glad to have you here.
Just waiting this super storm diet. I right now. What advice I'm going to eat? I did to do this. Taking out because it's just cheap on our coming to be there. But
Right, right. So, I'm assuming you are a first-time buyer. I'm assuming you are a first-time buyer.
in fact, tending to the week.
Yeah, okay. So the interest rates are high right now. In fact, we spent about 20-25 minutes talking about that. I'm happy to do that again with you since you came in a little after. They are high, but we've already had 3 interest rate cuts this year. Is it working?
Yeah, take that one.
Well, it seems to be working. Can you hear me? Yeah. So we've already had 3 interest rate cuts this year, right? June, July, and then September. We will have, the probability is very, very high that we will have 2 more cuts this year itself, October and December. That combined with the seasonality of the market, which is we see a major increase in activity coming in the month of February every year for the last 50 years. That data hasn't changed. So combining these 2 things where the activity suddenly picks up significantly in the month of February and stays there all the way up to June, with the interest rate cuts that we are experiencing right now, in my humble opinion, the best time to get into the market is the next few months, before February for sure. Because as soon as we hit spring, I'm not saying things are going to go crazy. I'm not saying we'll go back to the multiple offers and the bidding wars and the selling above asking. I'm not saying that will happen in February, but it will happen at some point. So to beat that, it's probably better to get started now, at least start the process, start exploring and see if you can even enter the market. Because again, we talked about something called a real estate action plan. We don't promise that we will be able to help everyone. The fact is we can't. But if, let's say, your numbers make sense and if we can help you, if it's a fit, we move on to the next step. Does that make sense?
Yes, see, that right.
Thank you. Sure, buddy.
If I were to go in, where is the... So if I were to go in mortgage place that I could use it, let's say it's like got lost with all so down payment required and I think that various people being how I sort of where I'm living. Can I expect you to pay more on a per month basis or just as much over the house that
Higher. Higher at the moment. Now, mind you, the interest rates are still high.
so I pay a lot of money.
You pay higher right now for the next few months, maybe a couple of years as well. I personally don't think it's going to be a couple of years, but you definitely pay more than what you're paying in rent right now. But again, that's where the number crunching part of it comes into play, right? Now, you're spending more, yes, but then how much are you making, keeping in mind the 7% appreciation,
Yeah.
right? Let's say,
I understand.
Exactly. So yes, your payments are higher, but if you look at 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, you're definitely making way more than what you're paying. That's true as well. Both sides are true.
So that's what premium.
Exactly.
There's one more thing to add there, that your payments can change as well, right? So when we say the payments start higher, that's not where they end up. So let's say you go for a variable rate and your payments keep dropping as the rates drop. Or even if you go for a fixed rate, there's something called rate insurance that I do, which is very specific to me. We can talk about it later on, where even if you are in a fixed product, we can try and bring your rate down every year without hurting you in any way, without changing any dynamic. And so we can talk about that. But just to kind of add his point, the payments are higher now, but they can go down over the next year or whenever the rates drop significantly.
Let me tell you about the mortgage.
Yeah.
Let's say you go to some pipeline house because you made it come out. I know now interest is coming down. And you put like Jason to this. Is that you can kind of help on the wages because I see what's required. If you got expectation, you have to push that bicycle.
Correct. So if you got a variable rate mortgage, as an example, then your payments are changing every time the rate is changing. So it drops. But I guess your question was about a fixed rate mortgage here. If you got into a fixed rate mortgage, your rate is fixed for whatever term that you got. However, if let's say you had, this is very specific to someone who has 20% down payment available. If that was the case, we have a specific product where we can change a part of your payment every year and try and use the new rates. It's a lengthy process. I can explain that in detail as we go on, but just to give you a quick summary, we have a product where if you're putting 20% down, we can re-amortize 20% of your mortgage every year. So let's say you got a mortgage of $500,000 at 4.5% rate. Next year, the rate is 3.5%. 20% of your mortgage can be converted to 3.5% next year. The year after, let's say the rate is 3%, another 20% of your mortgage can be converted to 3% at that time. And 3 years later, you're renewing anyway. Right? So it's complicated, but to answer your question, there is a possibility if there's 20% down available.
Speed.
We're not refinancing, there's no penalty here. It is just a re-amortization of the product where there's no penalty. We just change 20% of your mortgage every year into the new rate.
But I think there is an option to take an over.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So if the penalty is lower, as a second option, you can always go in for a refinance and get a new mortgage altogether. So what that means is you break your current mortgage and you get a brand new mortgage.
There might have there option if he's greatly.
That's what we need to figure out at that stage, right? So that's why I didn't bring it up immediately, but that is an option in case the penalty is not that high. And to that point, I'm going to say something very unpopular here. In today's rate situation, sometimes it is better to go with a non-banking lender than a bank because their penalties are much, much lower than a bank, sometimes just 1/3 of the bank. So if there's any chance you may want to break the mortgage in between the term, a non-banking lender will pay you rich dividends because their penalty is going to be much smaller.
One question.
Yeah,
10 years back, we saw Wilson come up and
I have.
here's a premium, right? Wilson is a premium area. We will see something like that coming up again, which is where this is to top down, condo where still a good investment makes like 10 years.
Well, yes and no, because Milton now, I live in Milton myself, so I know exactly what you're saying. But the fact is now we're talking about one end of GTA. Milton is pretty much where GTA ends, right? And on the east side of things, there's Whitby and Oshawa, right? I think perhaps the east side, just talking from now, a more pocket-friendly option. East side perhaps still makes more sense than the west because the prices are still way more affordable.
In particular area,
Well, Oshawa, for example, there are two great neighborhoods in Oshawa, Winfields and Taunton. As compared to the relative prices that we see on average anywhere else in the GTA, the prices are still very, very competitive.
anything about some Oslo,
Within the GTA, no. Within GTA, I mean, it's just the far end of, the east side that's still a little affordable. Milton, I know, is not that affordable as much as it used to be. Now, still, everything is relative. If I compare now Milton to Oakville or Richmond Hill, of course, it pales, when it comes to property prices in front of some more premium neighborhoods. But again, everything's relative. If you want me to name a couple neighborhoods which are, more economical and pocket-friendly than Milton, then I'd probably say explore would be Oshawa. Yeah. Any more questions, guys? We will be here as long as you want us to be here.
Dan, what?
Yes, sir. Welcome, first of all.
Sorry, so it's in the last year. The two questions. One is how evaluate probably was that in the or person by incident and by the education was talk about what like following design to be shared in order to with investors in the auto in the other get very findable one of that bit was by sure people that start with it is by your well possible things which are always in so these two versions stuff.
So let's talk about the second question first, hidden cost, right? And I think that's where good professionals kind of come into play because there should be no hidden cost at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of having a professional helping you out in the process, that there should be no hidden costs. Any and everything that you will incur as a cost should be laid out in front of you right up front. And that's where I think we do a decent enough job, I believe, because we have like a financial model, which is again a sexy word for an Excel spreadsheet, but that's what we have, which gives you, and I can pull it up on the screen without going into too much details, but where we explain, we go into details of what Mohit already talked about in terms of how the down payment works, what the property price is, what are the utilities cost, the taxes. Then we go on discussing what the closing costs will entail. For example, the lawyer fees, the land transfer tax, right? The HST or the provincial sales tax that you pay on your CMHC premium in case you're paying less than 20% down. So that is one way for us where we have an initial consultation and we lay out all the costs right in front of you. We share that with you so that you have it for your records, and that's all the cost you need. Plus, we also recommend having about 5,000K, 5K, on the side, just in case for any miscellaneous expenses that you might occur. But that's perhaps everything. And I know for a fact we haven't been wrong ever. Because again, it's a simple rule book that we have to follow. The costs remain the same. They obviously vary depending on what the purchase price is, but we're never off by more than a couple $100. Now coming back to the first question, what determines, let's say, the value of a property? Now, the list is endless. Let me just name a few things.
Like Japan.
Now, first, obviously, you rightly pointed out, it's definitely the location. Then there's square footage. What type of property is it? Is it a condo? Is it a townhouse, a semi, or a detached, right? Then what are the kind of upgrades that the house has had? Have the owner spent a ton of upgrades, or it's just the builder quality materials that are in? Because every time you put money in the house, there are certain things that really, uplift the value, which is, let's say, the kitchen, the bathrooms, the flooring, right? So how many upgrades does the house have? And then let's say, for example, does it have a rental basement potential? Because right now, with the prices being so high, a lot of people do want to go for, let's say, something that is readily rentable, giving them about $1,500 in rent. Because now look at it from this perspective. $1,500 in rent means that you're offsetting your mortgage in current interest rate scenario by more than $300K. Right? So let me assume on the higher side right now, this week we actually, both of us, closed on a condo and we got roughly 4.5% interest rate, right? But let me go conservative. Let me say 5% for easier calculation. So if you're borrowing 100K, that means you're roughly giving $500 in interest, right? Now, if you're getting $1,500 from your basement, you're offsetting your mortgage by more than 300K. Which means now the value of the house goes up because, again, you're drawing money from it every month. So these are some of the factors that collectively, and there could be more on a case-by-case basis, but all of these factors combined collectively determine the value of the house.
Basically, the economic comments I will start in the conversation with my body, taking the comments with the kindergarten.
Don Mills, you said?
Yeah, Don.
Okay, yeah.
So you can fit there for it. So you was on the side back. On the quickly is a totally call. It was in the end with mass to something ascendant seekers all the time with me. So you like obviously get out inside and state of scroll up and spider so only passing that please like that. You can hide an idea up in the floor and you will make some actually there so probably there is right like sort of in one the fire that.
Mm-hmm.
And at head city was we end up I'm actually already there about a minor aesthetic and on some laws at the end of the big school. But that
Right. Yeah. So a couple things here. Now, obviously the population has been growing significantly over the last 5 to 10 years. Don Mills, now if I talk about that area, now it's a big area, I'm not sure which neighborhood we're talking about specifically, but the fact is the houses are older, for sure. 70, 80, maybe 100 years and beyond. So the resale aspect of things do take a hit when, the property is this old. Again, it's not true for all neighborhoods. There are certain neighborhoods which do better than the others. And the second thing is, now you obviously cannot predict the future 100%, but there's something called the official plan, which every city has. So now if you're going or deciding to go into an area, what is beneficial for you as a consumer and us to keep you informed about is going through the official plan, which lays out exactly what the government intends to do in a particular city, right? So do they plan to develop a new GO station, or are there new condo projects coming in? Are there any refurbishment projects that are coming in where, let's say, an office building is now being converted into a condo building? So all of these things are talked about in detail in the official plan. They roll out an official plan every few months, maybe a couple of years, depending on, the kind of developments that are happening. So those things might be beneficial for us to look into before we are making a decision. Yep. Make sense?
So,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
yeah, what's the investment slide?
What's the investment?
Opportunity.
What do you mean?
Opportunity for investing at the first home buyer, I guess that's the question.
Is investing inside the keep doing like the guys. To what? It's a nice
Not sure if I understand the question.
He's something.
with
I'm not sure, Lawrence, I understand the question. Sorry.
Is it about how different is it for a first-time buyer versus an investor when an investor car?
Yeah, I thought you have an investment side of the business. So
So not for this, I mean, I'm happy to answer any question you might have, but not for this seminar, because we wanted to focus on first-time buyers right now, not investors so much. But let me answer your question, or at least try to, because I'll be honest, I'm not sure what the question is 100%. But if let's say you don't have a property right now, but you want to buy one, but you don't want to live in it. You want it for investment purposes, which means it's going to be a rental property. Then, Mohit, correct me if I'm wrong, but then you need a minimum of 20% down. Correct. Because you don't intend to stay in the property yourself. So, you plan to rent it out. You need a minimum 20%. Even the interest rate might be slightly different, one lender to the other in that situation. But again, I would advise, if let's say that's the plan, I would highly advise a one-on-one consultation, because there are a few things that we might be able to discuss, or Mohit might be able to guide you in that respect. Anything else, guys?
No, I'm not sure this is off the topic, but I think the political scenario situation might be changing. It's like, in case there is a snap action and conservatives coming in, and if you see, there's going to be a change in the real estate market, or the way policies are like.
Well, now I'll just give you my personal opinion on this one, right? Not a professional opinion, right? So imagine I'm just taking my coat off and now we're just chatting as friends. Now, this is what I think. Would it bring a certain degree of uncertainty in the market? Maybe. But the fact is, what's more of a driver in my head is the last couple of years. Now, there has been so much pent-up demand. People have been just sitting on the sidelines, and not saying that things have been easy, but even for people who could have taken action, have not taken action just because they weren't sure which way things are going. Second point, so those people, in my opinion, will come back to the market, irrespective of what's happening in the political landscape, because those things as such are in nobody's control. They have a way of, figuring themselves out. So I think irrespective of what's happening in the political arena, people are still going to come back to the market irrespective. Secondly, was there a second part to your question? No, I think I slipped my mind.
Understand, isn't going to be.
Yeah. No, I got my track back. So another point that I think people really talk about is the population growth, because conservatives obviously have a different stance when it comes to that. I think we're still going to see population growth. It won't be stopping for sure. It might not be as aggressive as it has been, right? If I'm looking at the projections which have come collectively from like all the different governments, we're still looking at about 500,000 people roughly every 12 to 18 months, right? It might not be 1.2 million, which was the case in 2023, but it's still going to be 500,000, which is still significant, which means we are growing by 1 million people every year. And for a country which has a population of about 41 million, growing by 1 million people every couple years is no small feat, right? So there's still going to be population growth, maybe not as aggressive. The houses, honestly, the earlier stat used to tell us that there was one house constructed for every 3 people in Canada. It's one house for every 10 people in Canada now. Yeah. And this is all from, and I'm quoting Dr. Sherry Cooper, who is, I think, DLC's chief economist now. She was chief economist, I think, for many major banks previously. And it's only going to get worse. It's not getting any better. So real estate, I always say, goes up, down, upwards. In the short term, we might have small dips in the market that we're seeing right now. But the fact is, the next peak is going to way surpass the previous one. No, that's the fact.
I have a couple of things to add to that, actually.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of the mortgage side of things, I don't think there'd be any change in Bank of Canada's stance, regardless of whether there's a snap election or not, because they are based on the economy and they want to do what needs to be done for the economy to bring the inflation in line, and whatever else that they have on their agenda. So that's the first point. The second thing that I've been hearing a lot from prospective buyers is this uncertainty of what will happen next year in the elections. So if there's a snap election and a new government is elected with a majority, I think it'll bring more stability, it'll bring more demand in the economy, because all those people who have been waiting, he talked about pent-up demand, may come back into the market. Because that instability of, what's going to happen next year is gone, and we have an answer right now.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything else? No, I'll take that as a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Feel free to take this one home. Right. It's a book that I, Mohit, and some of our other colleagues, have contributed to and put together. So give it a good read. If you have any questions, I'm always here to have a one-on-one. Right. What else? Yeah, I mean, I and Mohit both, we put out some content on a daily basis when it comes to investors, first-time home buyers, mortgage updates, and whatever else is going on in the real estate industry. If you do follow, or you are on Insta and TikTok, I would highly appreciate if you guys can follow us, and then you can be in touch that ways, where you'll still get all the information that we share on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Right? All right, perfect.
That's it.
Time for some wine? Yeah.
Absolutely. If you start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. I
know
really
how to answer your
appreciate it.
question. I'll come back to you. I have to answer your question. So, yes.
Thank you.
If anyone.
All right, I meant it when I said time for some wine. Would you like some?
Sorry.
I meant it when I said time for some wine. Would you like some?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, sure.
No, thanks.
No worries. No.